Okay, this talk will be about the kidneys, which is probably the most important trauma topic because it's the most impactful, it's the deepest. So, this is about scarcity and abundance, scarcity, abundance, and existence. The kind of biological role of the survival programs in the kidney are pretty straightforward. When you perceive abandonment or you perceive your kind of world is shattering, or you perceive a lack of abundance, your kidneys run this survival program which basically seals them so they retain water. So when you're far away from the tribe, or when you've lost your abundance, or when your existence is shattered, you won't dehydrate. This is kind of the biological, metaphorical survival purpose. It's quite higher dimensional. There's this aspect of scarcity and abundance involving the kidney, and there's kind of a good reason for that. The kind of Chinese medicine view of the kidney is that it's the storehouse of a substance they call jing, or it's kind of the essential essence which turns into qi and blood. The idea is that the kidneys seem to be a higher dimensional bioenergetic antenna which link us to some fundamental field for promoting life. The Taoists, I think they had it right. They believed there was 5 fields, 5 kind of critical organ systems which nourished the whole body and needed to be in balance and represented holographically the 5 elements. So what seems to happen when you have a trauma around abundance, scarcity, when you have a trauma around scarcity, existence, abandonment, is that not only does the kidney kind of biochemically seal to prevent water loss, but at the higher dimensions, at higher layers of reality, there are bioenergetic shifts. And these are the deepest possible bioenergetic shifts, I believe. So the kidney seems to, under situations of this type of trauma, it seems to react, and it seems to use that Jing essence, which is, a fundamental life force. It uses it externally. It projects it outward into the outside world, and it causes hyper manifestation of abundance. So if you have a trauma around scarcity, your kidneys will start projecting some of your life force out into your reality in an attempt to magnetize abundance and to magnetize your tribe members back to you, etc. But just due to the nature of trauma constructs and how these things are always adaptive but somehow parasitic, what happens is you get a big pulse of abundance or a big pulse of manifestation, but then since vibrationally you're vibrating at the setup of scarcity, you'll magnetize an equal amount of scarcity. So people with kidney traumas, it's really apparent in their lives. And I was one of these people. You would make a ton of money and then you would lose it all, and you would make a ton of money and you would lose it all. Or some people, it's manifested kind of in their job. They'll get a great job and they'll randomly get fired, get another great job, randomly get fired, and they'll never find that kind of middle ground of abundance. This is a really easy indicator of kidney trauma, this hyperpolarity between abundance and scarcity. In general, anytime you see a hyperpolarity expressing out in the world or expressing in your creative expression, that's a strong indicator of trauma. Hyperpolarities, they don't have to look like scarcity and abundance. They can be hyperpolarities of positivity and negativity. Like if you have a friend who's just the most loving, joyful guy, and he's so positive, but he always has the darkest jokes. So he's got this like vibration, high vibration, low vibration, hyperpolarity. That's an indicator of trauma. This program is super psychobiologically active. The kidneys are incredibly reactive to consciousness. They react pretty much in real time. And other than the thyroid, probably one of the most, adrenal glands, probably one of the most psychobiologically active organs. And you can see this when you do like a workshop or a retreat, or you're just like hanging out with your friends for a weekend. When you set the intention to be with your tribe and you're surrounded by people you really like, um, your kidneys naturally will release tension. It'll turn off kind of really deep survival programs. And you'll notice everybody has to pee constantly. In our workshops, this happens. People are up like every 15, 20 minutes going for a pee. And it's because you're releasing all this water that's stored in your body, and kind of at a higher dimension, you're releasing kind of scarcity energy. So this is quite apparent to see in social settings, and yeah, there's many constructs, many archetypes around the kidney. There's existence being shattered. There's abandonment, and then there's refugee conflict, and there's even trauma constructs around dangerous liquid. If you come into contact with poison or some liquid you consider dangerous, or even metaphorically associate with danger, your kidneys will react to that situation. And these traumas are critical to deal with. If you do nothing else for somebody, reintegrating kidney trauma is life-changing. You have kind of 5 vital forces, and when one of them, the kidney, is offline, this will shave, easily a fifth off your life. So bringing kidneys back online, reintegrating kidney trauma, you can add decades to somebody's life easily. And the thing about kidney trauma is they discovered this in German New Medicine. When there's kind of severe kidney trauma and there's this tendency to retain water, it's echoed holographically through all the cells and all the functions of the body. The body just tends to retain. And this is where you see amplification of other disease states. This is where you see swelling in the brain and cancers growing rapidly, etc. A big driver of these things can be kidney trauma, which is quite often in hospitals. People end up in the hospital. They feel fully abandoned. They feel like their world's shattering. They feel like kind of refugee. And then they'll have this kind of higher likelihood of kidney failure, a higher likelihood of complications. So it's really important, if somebody you love is in the hospital, just to make sure they feel that their tribe is there for them. And you can really prevent a lot of health complications. So the kind of first construct, this core construct of existence, my existence is shattered. This is one of the deepest traumas there is. I'll give you some examples. So a really rudimentary example is I had this trauma, and it was from when I was a little kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old. My stepdad was a whistleblower, and he was getting served papers for a lawsuit. And, we kind of knew that this process server was hanging around, and my stepdad was trying to avoid him. So one day I was looking out the window and I saw him sneak into our house through the backyard, trying to avoid these documents. And just seeing my domain, my home, somehow compromised, seeing kind of danger around my domain metaphorically, was enough to cause this existence trauma in the kidneys. A more dramatic example is a friend of mine. He was on vacation in Turkey with his family, and just really lovely family vacation they're all looking forward to. Everything was going amazingly in this beautiful town, and then there was a huge earthquake, and the buildings just literally started crumbling in front of him. And there was kind of the smell of death in the air from all the carnage, and they had to kind of become refugees. And it really affected him deeply, and he didn't realize it until he did a workshop with us. And then he pointed out that from then on, every time he chose a vacation, it was always like the Cambodian killing fields or catacombs or places with skulls and kind of the smell of death around, this kind of vibrational signature of death. He also pointed out that he asked his girlfriend to marry him during the recent Turkish coup, when, rockets were flying through the air and government buildings were getting shot at, things were exploding. When the world was literally crumbling, he kind of restaged his original trauma and felt kind of the vibrational signature of family, vacation, nourishment. And he asked his wife to marry him on that day. He just really felt moved on that day. And it's because of this trauma construct. So this one will affect you deeper than anything else. It'll always have you kind of second guessing your reality and magnetizing situations where your reality is crumbling. So this is kind of critical to reintegrate. Abandonment is another one. This one's pretty straightforward. Anytime you're abandoned, this construct gets developed, and it can be perceived abandonment. Very often it's when a kid is sick and his parents are like at work and they can't help him. This has happened in a number of case studies. So take a look through your memories where if you were ever sick and isolated, or if you experienced abandonment or rejection from your parents. These are incredibly deep, fundamental traumas, some of the deepest, as you can imagine. The child being abandoned by the family. This causes very serious remodeling of the consciousness and every layer of reality. The refugee conflict is also one. It's about being abandoned from your home country, abandoned from your land. And it seems to involve bureaucracy somehow. Like it activates quite easily when you feel like you're not in the place you're supposed to be, but you're getting blocked from being there by paperwork or bureaucracy. Somehow that kind of archetype of being blocked by the system develops quite unique traumas. So if you've ever been in a refugee type situation, it's important to reintegrate. A few more case studies and blueprints. One example of this existence trauma is quite profound. Was a client of mine had surgery on, I believe, her stomach, and she was allergic to one of the anesthetics they used, and she woke up during the surgery due to the anaphylaxis, and she just woke up and saw that like her stomach was getting cut open and that there's doctors all around her, and the doctors started panicking and scrambling. So if you just imagine the conceptual shock of a situation like this, you're asleep and you wake up and your entire existence is bloody and chaotic and life-threatening. This is kind of a core kidney trauma. And interestingly, since this event, she developed what was called an allergy to the PEG, to the compound they gave her to drink to kind of lubricate her stomach for the surgery. Anytime she came into contact with that again, her kidneys would seize. And it really seems to be like one of these vibrational sensory tract restaging events. People getting fired is quite often in trauma-inducing for the kidneys. If you've ever been like dramatically fired and just had a really difficult time about how you're gonna pay your bills, how you're gonna deal with things, this is something to look at. Getting fired is like a fast track to developing this type of kidney trauma. And if you kind of have these patterns in your life, like you're always getting fired, or you're always having a hyperpolarity of scarcity and abundance, it's a really strong indicator that you have this kind of kidney construct. There's also other kind of biochemical indicators. So for example, if you're one of these people who gains or loses 5 pounds and just kind of always hovers around the same weight your whole life, but plus or minus 5 pounds that can kind of shift up and down during the week, this is a strong indicator of water retention and psychobiological programs around water retention. As your trauma restages or you re-experience abandonment, you'll retain more water, and as you relax and lighten up, you'll let go of more water. Kidney stones are another example of the kind of biochemical manifestation of this trauma construct, and the kidney stones act as kind of like a nucleation point of bioenergetic emotional pain. The crystals themselves act as antennas for this kind of emotional pain, higher order emotional pain. Another indicator is if you randomly have kind of bouts of foul-smelling urine. If your urine smells quite bad, it's an indicator that there's bacteria in your kidney. When the kidney heals, it allows bacteria in to break down the tissues that were created to retain water and protect the kidney. So the bacteria are a tool of the body, but the process is like it's a destructive process of removing these structures. And so you'll smell the bacterial byproducts in your urine. And what often happens is you get this hanging healing. Your kidneys heal their abandonment trauma. You get the foul smelling urine, kidneys remodel, but the program's not fully turned off, and then it reactivates. And the same process repeats over and over and over again. And this is where you'll see cancers forming. When you have hanging healings and the tissue gets remodeled, broken down, remodeled, broken down, remodeled, broken down. This goes on for a decade, and this goes on for years. The body ends up becoming bioenergetically decoherent. We're pretty decoherent due to the toxicity in our environment and modern lifestyle, etc. And so these psychobiological programs, after a while of turning on and off, they lose coherence. And this is where you'll develop kind of cancers and things like that. There also seems to be a mechanism where if you have a trauma construct that's active like this, the program turning on and off, and it's active for long periods of time, the body seems to try to eventually dump the trauma energy into the biochemistry, which manifests as cancers or growths or physical toxicity, etc. So the gentleman that developed the modality recall healing does a lot of work with this. He found that there's certain time periods from the point of a trauma to when cancer presents. Often they're intervals of 8.5 years. So something to think about if you kind of have aggressive cancer pop up. Think back to what happened 8.5 years ago. It's possible that this could be a bit of a shortcut. I'm not sure if the rule always holds, but it's surprisingly accurate from what I've seen. If you heal one of these kidney traumas, it's really good to address the biochemistry to do a kidney flush. Andreas Moritz designed a really good natural kidney flushing protocol, which is quite effective. And there's natural products like stonebreaker and other herbs which trigger decalcification. So if you have this kind of issue, it'd be good to try the Andreas Moritz kidney cleanse. It'd be good to have some stonebreaker tea. And for the transport of calcium, it's really critical to have vitamin K2 and vitamin A. These things are probably one of the best sources is like a good quality local butter. So magnesium's also quite critical for calcification, calcium balance. So if you have this kind of kidney topic, because it's so fundamental, so low level and deep seated, it's good to address it on the consciousness side, but also assist on the biochemical side. And you can really kind of work miracles bringing kidneys back online. And you'll feel it if you have a significant kidney trauma and you reintegrate it. You'll feel a heat rolling up your back if your vital force comes back online, and it really does feel like some kind of higher dimensional fire or bioenergetic heat. It's really profound. And like I said, if you're missing one of these 5 vital forces, it's shaving decades off your life. So this is the ultimate kind of hack for longevity and life extension, is to just make sure your kidneys are energetically functioning properly. If your topic you're dealing with is mostly the manifestation of scarcity and not biochemical, there's also kind of approaches to deal with that. If you're having this issue of just not being able to pay your bills, you just don't have enough money, you keep getting fired, you keep losing your money, you can just do exercises to try to address this. So just close your eyes and meditate and just imagine the process of making tons of money or having the abundance you want, having a big house, having a family, etc. And just visualize it and feel into it and simulate the process. Like visualize the process of starting a company and taking these steps and hiring people and making an investment and making your first big sale, etc. Whatever your path to abundance looks like, visualize it step by step and feel into it. And then pretty quickly, for the average person, what we call a limiting belief will pop up. You know, you'll think of running this big company, and then this thought will pop up. No way, like I'm not organized enough to do this. And just lock into that thought and just feel into it and try to feel where you've thought that before. That's not a limiting belief, that's a trauma construct, which is activating on the sensory track of abundance. So you can do this kind of meditation, find limiting beliefs slash trauma constructs and reintegrate them. And if you keep doing this over and over with the same target, eventually you'll kind of clean the pathway toward manifestation of that target. It's really doesn't have to be that complicated. If you want abundance, just clear the path of everything blocking abundance and you'll have it. It's just the nature of our holographic reality.